Welcome to Elcrest Safety Day. This year's theme is Risk Normalization and Dilemmas. As we navigate the complexities of our industry, it's important to recognize the risks that comes with our work and take proactive steps to mitigate them. Today, we'll be exploring the ways in which risk normalization can impact our safety culture and discussing strategies for identifying and addressing potential dilemmas. I'm excited to see the ideas and insights that emerge from this conversation. So let's use this opportunity to reflect on our practices, share our experiences, and learn from one another. Once again, happy safety celebration. Think safety, think Elcrest.
Happy to really introduce this year's Elcrest EMP Safety Day, which we have themed risk normalization and the dilemma that goes with it. Basically, this is a whole week exercise for us. We have chosen the 7th of July every year to carry out this Safety Day event, and we do this in recognition of where we are coming from. We had a major incident in our operation at Benin River Valve Station, BRVS, that took the lives of 7 people, which we continue to reflect on and pray that all those families impacted in that incident will continue to get over this terrible incident and move on with their lives. But we do not want such incident to be repeated in our operation again, and that's why we have taken a very serious step to map out this 7th of July of every year from that day going forward as a day we remember this event and use that opportunity to strengthen every area of our safety net, HSC-wise, and ensure that our work environment is safe and everybody that comes to our work locations standing will go back home standing. So in 2021, we carried out this same exercise we are doing today, Safety Day, which we think BRVS Never Again. And then in 2022, we did another theme called On the Left Side of the Bow Tie. And then in 2023, we did another theme called Obey the Life-Saving Rules. And then in 2024, we followed up with another theme called Comply, Respect, and Intervene. And naturally, it follows through that, when we have begun to see good performance on the HSC front with over 10 million man-hour free lost time injuries or death, then people may begin to normalize things again and, slip back into complacency. And we don't want that to happen. And that's why we are capturing this moment as risk normalization and the dilemma that potentially goes with it, because people could give reasons like they are being under pressure to deliver quicker than necessary, or cut corners by saying we want to go cheap. And in the event of all of this, we miss out on the key element that safety must be number one and ensure that no one is hurt. So the message we are passing in this year's Safety Day for Elcrest EMP is that all people, including staff, field people, office people, vendors that work in our environment, that there is no room for normalizing risks for whatever reason. And we need to be very strong that we are developing that culture of people not falling back to complacency or normalizing risk, which will potentially cause accidents and fatalities, and we will not want to see that happen again in our operation.
So the definition that I like the best says that risk normalization is a gradual process through which dangerous practices, unacceptable practices, risky practices, processes, and procedure become acceptable over time. They become the norm. In other words, they become normalized. So in E&P operations, these are not acceptable at any point in time. There are so many examples of risk normalization, even in our everyday lives, as simple as people driving and at the same time texting. Because someone has done it and nothing has happened, then those risks tend to be normalized. When we bypass alarms, for example, so those are risks that are normalized. Some people go to the extent of removing alarms from their automobiles, from cars, silencing alarms, for example. So those are risks that have come to be acceptable to people, and therefore they do that. But in our operations, that is completely not acceptable. So we see folks that take shortcuts. We see folks that bypass checks that are meant to keep operations safe. That's completely not acceptable. So again, that's those examples of risk normalization. So from our part, the leadership of this company, what are we doing? What we're doing is to then make sure that people are aware that these sort of practices lead to unwanted outcomes and therefore should be avoided. We commit to training the people. We commit to providing exposure to our people so they know and identify risk normalization when they see it and avoid it at all times in our operations. So what we ask you to do, look out for risk normalizations in the operations, follow through with 2024 HSE theme, which is comply, intervene respectfully. So when you see it, please get on and make sure that you intervene to stop it in our operations. Together, we'll stay on the left side of the bow tie if we do those things simply and correctly.
I would like to first appreciate our Elcrest team for continuously maintaining a very strong safety performance in our operations. Well done. It's been a good journey, but like every other thing, safety records are like glass trophies. Once they crack, they are broken and it's difficult to mend. So I would rather encourage us again, while we celebrate the milestone achievement of our safety performance, let's keep an eye on the future and continue to maintain some chronicle unease around all our operations. Coming back to your question specifically, on whether I have been confronted with a situation where I have pressure to continue to produce and begin to cut corners that could eventually impact us. I would rather flip the question. At the position and the moment, my role as the Chief Operating Officer is actually, I should be the person creating such error-enforcing condition on our people. And I'm very mindful of it. Never to ask people to cut corners because I want them to produce more. And there is a very simple way I do that. Each time somebody tells me that he has achieved something at a milestone record, I would stop for a moment and ask the person, please explain to me how you did achieve that record-breaking performance. It is in the how that you understand exactly if people had cut corners and if they followed the procedures and the processes for a safe operation. So the question for me is a flip, is around how do I ensure that I don't put people under pressure such that they cut corners and at the expense of safety because we want to boost production. And I've just tried to explain to you how I do that, which is if you have achieved a record, I would stop for a moment to understand how you managed to achieve that, to ensure that you haven't bypassed any key process that could lead to a top event or a major safety incident. A culture of continuous risk assessment and ethical decision making is part of our process. First of all, our process recognizes that there could be changes in the way we do things. You could set out to go and carry out a repair in the morning, not anticipating that there will be rain. If rain comes, you need to stop, and it is all encapsulated in what we call dynamic risk assessment. So when there is a change in the environment, a change in the process, you need to stop, reassess the impact of that change in your process and in the way you do your work to ensure that you deliver it safely. So that is in the case of continuous risk assessment as we embed it in the processes. So it's about dynamic risk assessment. But then when you talk about ethical decision-making process, that is at the heart of what we do. Because again, the ethical nature provides that you do the right things even when no one is watching. So how you really live that out is in the heart and is in the individual. We encourage everybody to ensure that whatever you do, when it becomes public knowledge, you'll be proud of it. And the only way to ensure that whatever you do, if it becomes public knowledge, you'll be proud of it, is to ensure that you are doing the right things even when no one is watching.
To start, what do we mean by risk normalization? That's one thing first. Let me quickly define that. I see that as a situation where we make what is not normal, what is abnormal, we make it normal. An unacceptable risk that we make normal. And I will just give quick examples. You go to the field, you are wearing jeans and shirts, and you don't put on your hard hat. You say it's normal because nothing happened. It is normal to go and come back. It is abnormal. You saw near misses and you did not record it. You made it look normal. It is not normal. How about non-compliance acts? You all see it, and then nothing was done. Nobody even tried to do a stop work. It's not normal, but you made it. But because you've been doing this over time, and there were no accidents, then you have accepted that it is normal. That is risk normalization, which should never happen in our environment. Then you ask a question again around the dilemma around the risk normalization. This majorly is actually where you begin to have very serious confusion, right in your mind and your heart, around how do you place productivity? How do you place costs in an operational environment? How do you place targets in an operational environment against safety? Because in asset management environments, again, and I'll be very clear, citing examples, you are expected to deliver a well from rig move to deliver the well in 60 days. So during rig move, you do not even think about it, that there is a need for you to do a proper route assessment. The route assessment, know how many flag men you have to put on the but because you needed to make the date, you say, put the rig on the truck, bring down the mast, and then begin to move. And then you begin to kill people on the way. That's what it means. So we struggle with, we want to deliver production, and then they said there is a valve that is passing. You say, just continue, don't shut it. And it's a dilemma. But as a leader, let me quickly, I haven't given all these examples. As a leader, I always say this. There's nothing that is more important than safety. It is a priority. If I have to shut down the operation just to make sure that the people are safe, that I secure my facility, secure the environment, then I will do it. That's one thing. Then, overlooking those little incidents and not reporting is not so. I encourage people to speak up. They feel the chicks, and then we act on the chicks. Then we investigate. That's sometimes you could be reactive and then proactive. And I will tell you how. Reactive in the sense that if it has occurred, you have an IRP. You do feel very good assessment of what it is. And then you come back with recommendation and finding. Then you are proactive, where you put things in place that will make it never to happen again. Never to happen again. That's the way I see it. Then sometimes we celebrate, quite a lot of times, I celebrate, what do I call it, near-miss reporting. We celebrate when you report all that, which of the department actually come back with more reporting. We do that. So that at every point, we like to record, we like to see, we like to put the mitigation and then put a proactive action that will make sure it does not happen. So that's the whole essence. And in all, if I want to put my final thought, the risk, really, is not what we see. It is what we stop noticing. So let's put that in mind. It's not what we see, but it's what we stop noticing. The moment we begin to pick things that we notice, or you stand by, then you actually are mitigating against the risk that is not seen. Thank you very much.
Risk normalization is a situation where unacceptable acts or actions which potentially have risk elements are being accepted as a way of going about doing things, and sometimes it's even recognized subtly that these are not accepted ways of doing things, but over time it becomes like it's accepted, and that's why it is normalized. So the risks seem not to be recognized anymore, and that's why it's called risk normalization. And it develops gradually. It doesn't happen just one day. It's when people know some of the don'ts maybe in our area of operation, and then people begin to cut corners and say, we've done it before. We know it is not the right way, but we've done it before. We can do it again and again and again. Then over time, it will be seen like a norm. And it only takes maybe other factors, distractions, to actually make the risk to occur. And because people have gradually got to a point where they become complacent and begin to accept procedures that they know are not the right procedures and so on, but don't recognize it anymore, we will say the risk is being normalized. And we are very deliberate in our Elcrest EMP NEPL JV that real value is created only when things are done safely and nobody is hurt in our area of operation, and no adverse impact to the environment. So we are very deliberate about enforcing those rules so that people don't become complacent, don't gloss over our work procedures, permit to work, and all of these things. And some of the key safety measures we put in place, like don't enter enclosed space, without authorization and things like that. So don't do hot work in hydrocarbon fume areas. If they don't get reminded every day that this is central to the way we want to deliver business, then we'll get into that situation where we say that a number of risks have been normalized, and that is not how we want to operate as a sensible corporate entity.
Okay, risk normalization is a situation where in the oil and gas, where operatives or workers looks at the risky aspect of the work in terms of things that can lead to unsafe situation and ignore it. And after a prolonged time, when they believe that they've been able to go ahead without any incident, they will now think that all is safe, instead of looking at the hazards and putting all controls. So it's a dangerous trend in the industry, and we tend not to want that to happen among the workers. So what we do, we have to inform all the staffs and carry out safety enlightenment, basically to ensure that they do not relax and become complacent when it comes to carrying out major, even minor activities in the oil and gas operations. Intentionally is when you are looking for, when the manager wants a production and he's telling you to start up, when the guys are telling you that they want to go through the checks, they want to go through permit to work, they want to go through the safety processes, and you are pushing them to start up because you want your barrels, you want the money. So that's where management contributes. But however, when you ask them to do it safely, go through the processes, go through the rigs, the checklists, and carry out proper hazard checks and control before you do any activity, then that will minimize or even drastically cut it out of the system. But yeah, it comes in from time to time, but being in the operation business, you have to learn to manage it. You want to deliver your task, but at the same time, it has to be done safely. That's the watchword. Yeah, exactly. So this particular point is very crucial. So we came up with a strategy called Stop Work Authority. That's the situation where every work can be stopped if it's very unsafe, if there's a risk inherently dangerous in it. So we speak up. We've already empowered the workers to speak up. If you go to our facility, you will see the Stop Work Authority signed off by the top management of the company, authorizing the least worker to stop a work that is seen to be dangerous.
Because of the kind of operational environment we are in, production, of course, top management wants to see production at all times. Lately, we've had a field-wide maintenance work done, about 21 days. And when we were due to come up, of course, there was pressure on every side. We need to come up, we need to come up. And looking around the operations, we saw some gaps in terms of safety. In as much as we want to stay safe, which is the number one priority, we still need to also bring in risk assessment. We have to assess the situation proper and see, are there situations we can manage? For instance, we had the issue of fire extinguishers not being adequately available or have expired. And we had to look at this scenario. Even though expiration is on paper, but practically we know that as long as some of them are still retaining their charges, we inspected all of them and saw that we could still have adequate protection. So we had to analyze the risk, we had to assess the risk, and we had to manage between startup and safety and have a level playing ground to ensure that in as much as the situation on ground is showing that we are not safe enough, however, practically, with the risk assessment, we know that if we start up in the event of any situation, we are not found wanting. What we do in the field, we encourage in the field, is a daily safety briefing in form of toolbox meetings, in form of pep talks. In those meetings, we try to encourage the training, passing information on key safety practices to our workers. That's what we do exactly, and let them understand the inherent risk in what we do and how to mitigate them. You know, in the industry, depending on the company, the safety culture differs. For some people, safety is consequence, safety is punishment, safety is police, safety is imprisonment. However, it's not a very good culture. When we have those kind of situations, you find that people are afraid, people shy away from maybe reporting, like I talked about earlier, reporting on safe conditions, reporting on safe acts. What comes to somebody's mind is that if I report this thing, the guy involved will be fired. That's a very bad culture we would not imbibe. However, what we encourage is that people would report these things. And in fact, what we do in some of our weekly activities and meetings is that the person with the highest number of unsafe condition or unsafe act reported gets a bonus. What do we do with the reports? The report is not to indict, is not to punish people, but the report is to guide us for continuous improvement. We look at the situations, the gap. Is it that the person is not trained enough, is not knowledgeable enough, or is it that there were inadequacies of PPEs or whatsoever? It will help us know how to do our maintenance planning in the case of maintenance, in terms of the appropriate tools we need, appropriate PPEs we need. So that process helps, that culture helps build continuous improvement in our practices rather than the way people see it being indictive. So that's what I'll do, and that's what we are doing.
We run a business where safety takes precedence. So if we have a procedure that is designed for the business but currently begins to slow down the process, we go through a process called a plan, do, check, and review system, wherein the procedures that we have in place regularly are being checked to confirm the adequacy and that it supports the business. And wherein we have such a procedure, proper reviews are done, and these are documented via a management of change process before then we deploy it. But until that proper investigation and review is done, we will continue to use the procedure that has been in place. We will not change it because that has implications.
In finance, we don't see safety as a cost center. We see safety as an investment in operation continuity and also in saving lives. So what we try to do to support the safety culture of Elcrest is to ensure that we provide sufficient funds for safety critical projects, especially around operations and the training of the frontline personnel and every other thing that would ensure that the operations are carried out in a safe manner. Now, another thing we also do is providing accountability. Now, before we initiate projects, what finance and the supply chain team would also do is to ensure that safety measures are considered in all of the projects that we go into. You have to ensure that the safety controls are put in place. You have to ensure that environmental impact would be limited. You have to also ensure that all of the safety measures that should be considered and the safety controls that should be considered are considered in all of the projects. And even in hiring contractors, before you would vet any contractor, you have to ensure that they have also all of those safety measures put in place in all of the organizations. So you have to get the right people to work for you. We also have to ensure that the employees in the organization are trained. And what do we do in finance? We provide those funds. You understand, we provide the budget, we provide the funds, and we ensure that the safety culture is promoted. Elcrest SLT is also focused on ensuring that safety culture is promoted from the board of the directors to the MD, to the COO, to the CFO, and even across the organization. So for us, safety is a value that is embedded in everybody, not just with the HSE department or just with operations, even in HR. And we ensure that the people are trained, activities are funded to protect the company.
I mean, there are quite a few examples, but if you ask me for one, I think the first one would be where performance is prioritized above all else, like it's prioritized above anything else. To the extent that employees, look at even people in senior management, how they go over, and beyond, including breaking rules, if you must say, just to achieve what is like a performance metrics. And issues around the how, the protocols, the quality control, and safety are all ignored. So when that happens and employees from distance watch that, that can happen without consequences, it means that in a way you are normalizing risk, and people can get into the habit of any other thing does not matter apart from showing performance, either it's production performance, financial performance, so that kind of behavior can definitely encourage risk normalization. The good thing about Elcrest is in all our engagement with employees, and credit to the managing director and all the other members of the senior leadership, we tend to emphasize and put safety first. So that's to get people away from that habit where they think safety does not matter, rather performance. That's one example. And if I can give another one, is where what is called psychological safety, or where people feel like they have the authority, I mean, maybe not on paper, but to be able to escalate or bring out issues when they see that risks are being normalized. So when they can do that without any fear, that they will either get called out, punished, sanctioned, or be spoken to in a rude way, that's also one example. So you want people to feel safe enough, to feel encouraged, to be able to raise their concerns without any fear. So in an environment where such is not encouraged, risk can be normalized, because people then want to move on anyway and say that, look, maybe it doesn't matter that I raise such concerns. The other one is where everything becomes like a ritual. It's all, there's a form to fill, just fill it, or you can always get a waiver. If enough attention is not even paid to the spirit and the commitment behind a certain safety action, that can lead to risk normalization, because people then think, oh, once I can fill the form and file it off, it doesn't matter. So that's one other thing that can lead to risk normalization. Another example is where you don't encourage people to discuss things. Rather, you just say, oh, just do it anyway. You don't go into reasons, you don't go into articulating the benefit, what will be the downside if those things are not done. That sort of attitude where, look, it's that way, this is how it's done, without taking the time to really enunciate things and bring out the facts, so that people can onboard themselves in a certain way, to those quality and safety practices. That can encourage risk normalization as well. And the last point we want to talk about is just where you ask, the culture of safety, you tend to ring fence it that, oh, it's important for management and not for employees, or it's important for employees and not management, where people can see through that there is any form of dichotomy. You must make sure that either management or employee can be held to the same standard when it comes to compliance with safety. So that's another organizational behavior that may encourage risk normalization. The other point, which is actually very crucial, is when we ignore near misses or small incidents. Oh yeah, we're lucky this didn't happen, and then we leave it at that. If those incidents are not properly investigated, documented, and acted upon, it will encourage risk normalization, because what it will mean is for people to think, well, we just need to be lucky the next time, when in reality, you may not be lucky twice. So it's important that we take incident investigation, incident documentation, and taking lessons learned from incidents, even when they don't have grave consequences. We take it very seriously, and we highlight what could have been in terms of the grave consequences of such incident, so that people can take it to heart. And especially the last part of it, to then act upon the lessons that may have been learned from such incident. So that way you are not normalizing the risk.
I think from an HR perspective, the tone at the top is always very important. Leadership. The leadership always have to lead by example, walk the talk. They have to model safe behaviors, and that way the rest of the team will just, follow in those steps. So psychological safety is key. And when I say psychological safety, I'm talking about having a no-blame culture. People should feel comfortable enough to report when things go wrong, and we need to focus more on the root causes, the learnings, rather than punishing people for making mistakes or for actually even reporting these incidents. I think you must have different ways, open channels of communication. You have to have an open doc policy where people feel comfortable to come and report if something has gone wrong, or maybe people can report by email or by suggestion boxes. So all this come together and add to promoting, a safe workplace culture. Also, it's always good to reward. Recognition and reward is always also a positive way of encouraging a safe workplace. When people have reported incidents or have avoided incidents from happening by taking certain measures, it's always good to recognize those people and, if possible, also reward them. So I think these are just generally ways we can, improve, or we can adopt safe work culture in our organization.
Leadership sets the tone for everything that happens in the entire chain. And that's why we are taking it seriously, to ensure that we conduct regular HAC meetings. We do HAC induction for any new person, whether they be vendors or our staff, or even any visitor to our area of operation, to make sure that they understand the basic safety rules that must be observed in our area of operation. So culture is a way of life. So if you don't build the right culture in the environment, then you can't expect much results. So we set the tone as management. We try to encourage the culture of compliance, adherence to work procedures, rules, and rules of engagement, basically, sometimes this risk normalization also have some tension around trying to deliver fast or deliver cheaply and so on. And we, as management, we set the tone that there is no value in delivering cheap and then risking the lives of people. Then there is no real value in saying we want to do it quick and then end up in accident. So we want the right work procedures to be followed. Yes, we are interested in the bottom line costs, but it must be in the context of safety and all of this. So that when we say we have delivered certain outcome, it's not that some families are left crying while we are parading ourselves that we've delivered things. So it must be safe. Then before we begin to optimize costs, of course we will not shy away from it, but the culture is that it has to be safe first, and people must be held accountable to make sure that safety is above the line before the other deliverables.
Risk normalization, it's basically a mind thing, right? So having said that, it's about people subconsciously beginning to normalize certain shortcuts. Okay, without understanding, I would say yes, I have challenged risk normalization in some aspects of the business. Without understanding, I've challenged risk normalization in this particular case as it regards resource availability. Okay, so we got to a point of almost normalizing a certain absence of a certain resource. I did challenge that situation and I got it remedied.
So in the oil and gas industry, I see risk as the likelihood of occurrence of a fatality and what the associated consequences if such a fatality happens. Over the years, I have witnessed safety dilemma where the action to do it or not to do it is faced right in front of you. Yeah, in a situation where I'm being faced with a risk and such risk is being reported to my supervisor and he happens not to take it very serious, what I will do in such situation is to take that situation or report that situation to a higher authority that would be able to listen to my concern.
There are a couple of indicators or warning signs that shows that an organization or a team is gradually sliding into a risk normalization mode. When you see these warning signs, then it's an indication that something needs to be done. When you see things like action after action reviews not done, learning from incidents not done, it shows that lessons have not been learned from project delivery, lessons have not been learned from incidents to prevent reoccurrence. So there is one indication that an organization may be slided without knowing into a risk normalization mode. Again, if you see things like peer pressure to conform from the workforce, we begin to hear things like, that's the way we have always done it. I have been on this job for 20, 30 years. Nothing will go wrong. When you begin to hear some of these comments, gradually there'll be a pressure on the workforce to begin to conform to this kind of unethical behaviors. It shows that gradually that organization is without knowing, gradually sliding into a risk normalization mode. There could be instances where there are inactions from top management, from leadership, inactions when things like consequence management are not being meted out. Of course, gradually, the organization will begin to slide into a mode where risk is being seen as a way of life. That nobody sees anything wrong in, carrying out risky behaviors. Unsafe acts become the order of the day. So these are one of the warning signs. And again, when you see frequency of breaking rules begin to increase, it's an indication. It's a warning sign. So when you begin to see some of these kinds of signs, you know that gradually, even without knowing, that team or that organization is gradually sliding into a risk normalization mode. Or maybe you see cases of warning signs not being obeyed. Warning signs are there to warn people of hazards, to remind people on the need to carry out safe acts and safe behaviors. But when some of these warning signs are being ignored, what does it tell you? Gradually, even without knowing, the team is sliding into a risk normalization mode.
Finance, training, and communication play a key role in combating risk normalization. At Elcrest, the finance audit team, it plays an important role in identifying risks that exist across the organization, whether it's at the office or in the field, and making sure that we document the processes that we put in place to mitigate, manage such risks. Now, we look at this practice from time to time and make sure that even if a particular risk hasn't materialized, the processes that we put in place to make sure that if they do, it's well mitigated, are always followed by everyone at Elcrest. So a simple analogy I will use is, if you drive a vehicle every day and you wear your seatbelts, but you've been doing that for a year and you've never had an accident, it doesn't mean you stop wearing your seatbelt, because nobody knows when an accident may happen. And when the accident happens, because you've always worn your seatbelt, you will have a very good chance of surviving that accident. So all the processes that we put in place across the offices, with the fire drills that we have in place, or across the field, whether it's how we anchor our badges, must be followed at all times, so that the fact that we haven't had accidents doesn't give anybody an excuse to relax on making sure that they follow the risk mitigation procedures. We believe that by so doing, we'll enhance safety of everybody at Elcrest.
I have experienced risk normalization. I can give you a typical example. Even in the home, sometimes water spray on the ground as people are moving from place to place, carrying waters to the bathing room, or even in the kitchen. So when water is splashed on the ground, sometimes we overlook it as normal until somebody falls and get injured. That is risk normalization, because to us, when the water splashed on the ground, we say, oh, maybe it's little quantity, it doesn't matter. So what I do every day now, in my kitchen especially, as they are working, cooking, doing a lot of things, once I'm there, I always tell them, please, get the towel on the ground always to clean the floor. Don't normalize the risk. But my wife will say, oh, you preach safety too much and all that. I said, yes, so safety is not too much. And when a senior engineer downplay a safety rule observed during an inspection, I will draw his attention to it. When you are drawing somebody's attention to anything, you must do with what we call the compliance, intervention, and respect. So I will try to make him see it with respect, so that he can listen to me. He has to look at the implication of neglecting such safety, rule or practice or whatever is observed that is an anomaly. So I'll draw his attention to it.
Normalize risk is one of those parts of safety and HSE that we always want to avoid. And then in doing this, it actually requires structural approach to prevent and then to also reduce and to also avoid normalized risk. And if I mean structural approach, what do I mean by structural approach? It involves combinations of different basic methods that can be used to eliminate or reduce or avoid normalized risk. So what are these methods? We have risk identification. We also have risk assessments, and we also have risk mitigation. So these are the basic methods that are involved in the reducing, avoiding, and then eliminating the normalized risk.
Maintaining transparency is very, very important because it builds trust. Not only trust, it promotes accountability, it enables collaboration, and most importantly, it helps, to mitigate risk, through fast actions. When you're transparent with the public, with all you do, when you don't have any skeleton in your cupboard, when you're not hiding anything, it makes the stakeholders to trust you. Integrity, transparency is key. We should wear it here in Elcrest. We should preach it. We should always talk about it. It's not just about the MD or the COO or the top management. From the list, to the top there, we all have to talk about integrity.